Why did Bira succeed and every other brand felt outdated?
बीरा के 10 माथे बीरा के 100 नाम छेड़े जो बीरा को धमाधम।
Welcome back to Marketing Uncharted, and today we are discussing how Bira made beer in India cool again. Ankur Jain, a serial entrepreneur with stints at Microsoft and a beer import venture, spotted that the craft beer industry had a gap. That was in the year 2015, and with just 3 crore rupees as seed capital, he launched Bira. Pre-Bira beer market was a whooping 25,000 crore market. But it was stagnant with legacy brands like Kingfisher that owned 90% of the market, and the vibe it had was dated masculinity. Beer consumers in India that were aged between 18 to 35 years consumed on an average of approximately 2 liters per year as compared to a global average of 20 liters per year. This was because their vibe of the beer brands that India had is what they were rejecting, and that was a huge gap that could be fulfilled in the market. The mission of Ankur Jain was very clear. He wanted to democratize premium beer for the youth of India, say for people around 35 years or under that age. And the whole point was to make beer accessible and cool, just like a Spotify or Netflix. Let's understand the price positioning of Bira. As you can see this table, here it says that the price positioning of Bira was binary. What they did differently was source the recipes from European cultures that were brewed locally over there. What they named them were strong, blonde, and white. These were the different levels of bitterness that the beer had, and it in 3 years was able to capture 5% of the beer market that was actually ruled by legacy beer brands. What Bira did was turn beer into a lifestyle product. They positioned it to be an accessory which elevated your lifestyle. Say that you're switching from a regular phone to an iPhone, same functionality but an elevated positioning. And that's what made beer cool in India. Bira became the symbol of cultural glue. It sponsored big events like IPL after parties, some AIB roasts and whatnot. And that is how people got together over a Bira. From zero to a 800 crore revenue by 2020, Bira grew faster than any FMCG disruptor India had ever seen before. Here's how they did this. Visual DNA of Bira. It had a monkey logo, which was very easy to remember. 91 was their playful nod to the IPA strength, and because Bira was such a playful brand, it generated a lot of user-generated pictures and videos, and that's how it became social media gold. Their distribution hack was aggressive. They went full throttle sales and made a presence in over 50,000 stores across India and had over 70% presence in bars and pubs, gaining that amount of sales everywhere. They had an edge over the taste with a 4.8% ABV sweet spot. This meant this beer was more refreshing than bitter as compared to the other global imports that were happening in India. There were many things that went wrong with Bira after their successful launch, and here are the reasons why Bira as a brand failed. Number 1, they assumed that their demand is always going to be infinite. They had a 500 crore rupee capex attached to 10 plus breweries with a 5-year fixed contract. Unfortunately, came COVID, and there was a lot of competition which dropped their sales by 20 to 30%. However, their fixed cost still ate up 30% of their margin. This was the first loss. The second reason was they went global too soon. They captured 2% of India's market, true, but they immediately jumped to over 8 countries to make a global presence. This obviously led to a lot of money being invested globally. The leadership had split up and was handling operations India and overseas, and this led to a lot of negligence in the India sales. The third thing is that Bira did a mass pivot and launched Bira Light, which actually was to chase volumes. Bira Light was launched at the price of rupees 90. Now this did 3 things. It cannibalized into their own core line, and Bira Light sold more than what the other beers were selling. Their margins dropped down to 10%. And the competition brands like Carlsberg were actually market leaders. So the preferences were still towards the competition. So this still didn't serve the purpose that it was launched keeping in mind. Bira had violated excise licenses in over 27 states. They had a 6-month blackout period, which was from March to August, which is actually the time of peak sales, wherein the competition actually took up 30% of their sales. And lastly, they hired over 1,000 people in the name of a cool startup, but actually had a high 30% attrition rate by not being able to keep up their employees. FY24 saw a 20% sale loss for Bira, and it had dipped down to 1600 crores. It was a loss of 749 crores to the company. Their valuation was down by 80% from its peak valuation. They had a debt restructuring, and they also planned on expanding in UAE. There are certain lessons that we can learn from Bira's business. The first one is that people do not always buy the product. They buy an emotion associated with the product. Bira felt young, urban, and creative. Till it stayed like that, it was getting the sales. Price positioning has to be strategic and not emotional. It should not be the case that you have entirely changed your positioning from a premium to a mass brand based on the price just to chase volumes, and this is exactly what Bira did. And then comes growth. They expanded too soon, too fast at too many places, which led to chaos and a loss of cash flow at multiple operational levels. Bira shall always remain the first brand to launch craft beer in India. It will always have a recall value for people. What it did wrong was the scale of the craft beer. Building a business is one thing, sustaining it is another, and that is the real lesson that we learn from the brand Bira. So if you've watched this video till here, don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and thank you for watching.